Hey guys, it's Abdul for the good folks over at Leon Tailoring, 809 North Delaware, downtown Indianapolis. You know, this month, my wife and I are celebrating our 12th wedding anniversary, so I was looking at some pictures from our wedding from 12 years ago, and notice how good I look in that tuxedo from Leon Tailoring. Not just me, but all my groomsmen as well. And so if you got a big formal event or a wedding this fall, or maybe wedding next spring, think about our good friends over at Leon Tailoring. Larry, Norm, Kim, and Judy would be happy to see you and happy to make you look as good today as I did 12 years ago. Well, you'll almost look as good as me as 12 years ago. I'm just kidding. Swing on by Leon Tailoring. They'll be happy to see you. 809 North Delaware, downtown Indianapolis. Well, it looks like property tax assessments are all the big rage in Indiana's political class so far this year. Mike Braun's come up with a plan to deal with property tax assessments, including overhauling the homestead deduction, capping property tax bills, and the like. But the question is, does his math add up? And then Don Rainwater has also come up with a proposal as well. And so joining us in studio is Don Rainwater, the Libertarian candidate for governor. So Don, my friend, how's it going?
It's going great, Abdul. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, your reaction to Mike Braun's property tax plan?
Well, I see several things there that concern me. First of all, I see a situation where Hoosiers need relief from perpetual property taxes. This idea that you can pay property taxes for 30, 40 years on your home, I think is inappropriate. And so I don't think his plan addresses that at all. I also have a problem with the fact that two Hoosiers can live right next door to each other, have almost the exact same home, and one will have a 2% increase in their property taxes. The other will have a 3% increase simply based on either age or whether they have children under the age of 18. I believe that every Hoosier should know what their property taxes are going to be every year, and I believe that it should be the same plan for everybody.
Now let's start with about the paying the property taxes after you buy your home. Explain that about paying property taxes for like 7 years. Explain that.
Yeah. So my plan is that basically we would abolish the current property tax system, abolish the estimates or the assessments, pardon me, and we would go to basically a sales tax on a real estate transaction system, where when you buy a residential property, you would be basically paying 7% of the purchase price, and you can either pay that at closing, or you can pay it 1% a year, escrowed for 7 years until you've paid that 7%, which is what we do today. We pay an escrowed amount every year. But with my plan, after you've paid that 7%, you're done with property taxes on that property, and you actually own it the way that the founders, I believe, intended.
So if you do that, how do you pay for police and fire?
Well, so that's a great question, and
of course it's a great question.
Absolutely,
that's why they don't pay me the big bucks.
And my answer to that is, how do we pay for it today?
With property taxes.
Yes, well, with the portion of property taxes, because what many, if not most, Indiana communities are doing today is they're creating these tax increment financing districts, which basically siphons the tax increment, the increases every year, and instead of that money going towards fire and police and schools, it's being given to an economic redevelopment commission to spend on what we'll call amenities. So really the increases that you're seeing in your property tax bills, to a great extent, that money is already being siphoned off. So let's stop taking that money from Hoosier homeowners, and let's figure out how we do economic development the organic way, which is to let private investors invest in our communities.
Our guest in the program today is Libertarian candidate for Governor Don Rainwater. Talk about property taxes and assessments. Mike Braun unveiling his property tax plan. So obviously there are lots of questions about the Braun plan, and Don Rainwater has some of those questions as well. Don, one of the big criticisms about property taxes is, like, as long as you owe property taxes, you never own your own home.
Correct.
But if I don't pay my income taxes, I can lose my home too.
Well,
because
if you notice, I'm also a proponent for eliminating the state income tax. And as a matter of fact, I am a proponent for eliminating the federal income tax. One of the things that I have uncovered in my research is that over the past 5 years, according to the National Association of State Budget Officers, our state general fund spending has increased from $16 billion in 2019 to $26 billion in 2023. That's a $10 billion increase. Now, I heard people telling Lieutenant Governor Crouch that eliminating the state income tax would reduce state revenues by $8 billion. Well, if we just went back to 2019 spending levels, we could eliminate $10 billion of spending.
But how would you do that when you got obviously you got the inflationary costs go up from time to time, but also with Medicaid, how would the state do that? Go back to those 2019 levels, but you still got a lot more people on Medicaid.
Well, first of all, and Medicaid, that's a great topic, because we hear the state say that they made a $1 billion accounting error in Medicaid. But if you look at the whole budget report for the current state budget, you'll see that the Indiana General Assembly has given pretty near $1 billion to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. I would say that keeping the Medicaid promise is more important than giving AWS or Meta 35 or 50-year use tax exemptions. We need to rethink where our money's going. One of the things that I hear all too often is this gaslighting question about, where, how are we going to pay for this or that? This percentage of the money goes to, and there are measurements and metrics. A percentage is a metric. What I want to know is, show me the canceled check where all the money went. Show me the line items, where this money's going, and what the Hoosier citizens got out of it. I think we as citizens of the state of Indiana should be asking the critical question, where is this money going and how does it benefit me? Why are my tax dollars paying for something if it doesn't directly help me?
Now, would it be directly or would it be indirectly? Because a road in Allen County doesn't benefit me down here in Marion County at all. So I guess my question is, would it be direct or indirect, or can you, or at least, at least 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Sure. And let me say it this way. To me, a direct impact is my money is going to actually do something that benefits individual Hoosiers. So if my money is benefiting somebody in Whitley County or in St. Joseph County, at least I can see this money is actually doing something for someone somewhere. But when my money is going to create an opportunity for an out-of-state company to come in and compete for employees with Hoosier small business owners and franchisees, and I know that these folks are struggling to staff their businesses, and we actually have fewer small businesses and individual franchisees in Indiana than we had 10 years ago. And that's not all because of the pandemic or the reaction to the pandemic. I believe that we have to do a better job of really drilling down into where is our money being spent. And I think as a professional project manager, I see a lot of things where projects are just perpetually going on and on and on, years over time, years over budget. I will actually call out Grand Junction in Westfield, which was approved and budgeted, I believe, in the $38 million range. And the last time I looked, the price tag was well over $55 million. That's almost double. That's just ridiculous. And there are Hoosiers who need their money for their benefit. And we just need to be more responsible with how we spend money in the state of Indiana.
Our guest on the program today is Don Rainwater. Don is the Libertarian candidate for governor, and so we're talking about property taxes. Mike Braun unveiling a plan that he says would provide Hoosiers with property tax relief, even though he hasn't put any sort of numbers behind as to how much would be saved, how much would cost. And also, so we're talking to Don Rainwater about that proposal. Don, one of the things you said that the plan reduces the rate of annual increases but doesn't stop the increases. Obviously, as costs of governments grow, like I said, the Medicaid population expands, the whole 9 yards. Are you saying that property tax should be just frozen, period, or if you can't eliminate them, just freeze them altogether, or help us out here?
Well, I do to some extent. So there are two elements to raising tax revenue, right? You can increase the amount that each individual pays, or you can find ways to increase the number of people paying. And I believe that in the state of Indiana, it has become way too easy for our elected officials to use the phrase, government should never spend more than it collects. That to me is a cop-out. That is not true fiscal conservatism. True fiscal conservatism is government should never spend or take in more than it needs to operate. And we need to do a better job of holding our state government, our local governments, our county governments to their constitutional purposes and stop allowing them to create new things for themselves to do. I like to compare government to the Blob from the old Steve McQueen movie in the 60s.
So basically get a giant fire extinguisher to freeze it, and that way you can kill it?
if that works. But the idea being, right, that the Blob consumed human beings, and the more human beings it consumed, the bigger it got, and the bigger it got, the more human beings it needed to consume. And I believe that government in its current and Jefferson kind of alluded to this in the Declaration of Independence, that whenever government gets out of whack, we the people need to do something. I believe in Indiana what we need to do is hold government more accountable, make government more transparent. And when government is spending money on things that benefit me at your expense, we need to cut that. Because and at no time should government be choosing winners and losers. Government shouldn't benefit me if it hurts you. Now, if government can do something that helps everybody, if the rising tide truly lifts all boats, then I'm all for that. But the problem is that's not what we have in Indiana today.
Part of the issue with property taxes has been how property is assessed. Obviously, because assessments go to property home values, and I always tell people that there are basically only 12 people in the state of Indiana who fully understand how property taxes work, and I'm 1/3 of one of them.
Yeah, I read that. I read that yesterday.
I'm 1/3 of one of them. I've been covering this stuff and budgets forever. My thing has always been with assessments. Obviously, the year-to-year assessment isn't necessarily working. What about say a bit like a rolling average, like every 3-4 years, your property value is assessed based on the fair market value of homes in the neighborhood? Because once somebody improves their home, all the home values on that block tend to go up a little bit.
Well, so there are two elements to that. First of all, I was taught as a very young man that the only true value of anything is what you paid for it or what someone is willing to pay you for it. And when an individual sits down and uses what other people paid other people for other stuff to determine what your stuff is worth, I consider that arbitrary, and I don't consider it a fair value of your stuff.
But so my question is, let's say I'm a big comic book collector, as you well know.
Absolutely.
I own a copy of Avengers 150.
Yes.
I paid, say, $50 for it, but I also have the Blue Book value of it, and the Blue Book value says it's $100. Now, granted, I can only get what somebody is willing to pay, but at the very least, doesn't the Blue Book give me sort of a guide as to what my comic book is worth? Or Blue
theoretically, yes, but if the government came to you and said, Abdul, we say that your comic book is worth $100, so you need to pay us 7% of that every year. And we're going to reassess what your comic book is worth every year. Now, you're investing in that comic book, one, intrinsically, and you want the value to increase. But if you're giving the government, and I'll just directly take this to the idea of if a couple or an individual owns their home for 30 years, under the current system, you're paying 1% of the assessed value of your home.
Up to 1%.
Up to 1%, sure. Over a 30-year period, you're probably going to be paying the government 30% of the equity in your home. For what? I have a problem with the idea that the government has a right, and when the government can take your property if you don't pay, they are enforcing a right in their eyes to 30% of your equity over a 30-year period. I don't think that makes sense. And so here again, I'm perfectly fine saying a compromise is I'll pay you the 7% sales tax on my real estate transaction. But that's really all the government is going to get. This idea that they can just keep getting a piece every year is really just offensive to me, and I think it's offensive to most Hoosiers.
Final question for you, my friend.
Yes,
as
sir.
we look at property taxes and assessments, one of the things that makes property valuable are the services that the land gets. For example, a lot of people say, move to a neighborhood, what's the first thing to look at? Well, look at what are the schools if they got small children, what are police, what are fire. For example, take Hamilton County, for example. Your taxes are higher, but you get more services to go along. You get people, at least people think they get better services to go along with it.
Or they would think they would.
Or as I joke and say, it's like going to
I've lived in Hamilton County. I don't know that that's the case.
It's like going to White Castle and getting Hyde Park Steakhouse prices.
Yeah.
I always argue people are willing to pay for what they think is worth it. So I guess the question is, are taxes too high, or is it a matter of individuals think that, hey, you know what? I'm not getting my money's worth. I don't want to pay these taxes, or I am getting my money's worth. I don't mind paying the taxes.
I think it's a mixture of both, Abdul. I think people have seen their property values from an assessment standpoint skyrocket. And here again, if my property value goes up, then I'm benefiting from my investment in my property. The government didn't invest in my property, but the government gets additional increased investment dividend, if you will, for my property value going up. That's why I say the only true value is what you paid for it. So if we, I'm willing to have the conversation about, well, is 7 years or 7% not enough? Should it be a little more? Well, let's have that conversation, but let's agree that the only true value of your property is what you paid for it, and that's the way that we should be taxing property, in my opinion.
So if I sell my property for $1, that means the property value taxes are $1?
Yeah.
All righty. Don Rainwater, Libertarian candidate for governor. Don, appreciate you taking a few minutes to stop by and talk with us about property taxes today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity.